Hey everybody, good to see a bunch of faces on tonight. We're going to get back into our presentations here for the group. I'm going to turn it over to Dave Siegel and Jeremy Valentine. We're going to lead us through some managing and preventing crew conflict. Gentlemen, floor is yours.
All right. Welcome, everyone. We wanted to change up the topic format and structure a little bit this week. Hopefully, everyone's done with your tests, the CFO test, the crew, any clinic tests that you have had, or that maybe that will be coming up soon, or all that. And we've been talking a lot about mechanics and all that. So this topic's a little bit different. Talking about things that happen during the year on your crew, how to maybe prevent some conflicts, how to manage some conflicts, and how to be a good crewmate as well. Because whether you're a crew chief or you're not, you're definitely a leader in some capacity on your crew. You can definitely help maybe calm down a crew member, or just basically help the whole crew get through maybe a difficult situation, whether that's on the field or off. So we want to make this a little bit interactive, especially towards the latter part of the presentation. So if you have maybe a crew situation that you experienced before, we don't need to know names, obviously, whether it's off the field or on, please think of that, and then we can talk about it. Maybe some different ways to approach it, because as we'll mention, there's lots of ways to slice the apple. So we'll go ahead and get started. Before we do that, Jeremy, anything to add?
Nothing big. I think the one thing that I hope you all can take from this discussion, it will be a little high level. We're going to encourage a lot of questions because, as you can see, there is no slide presentation set up. We're not going to go over any video today. So it's going to be a lot of two-way discussion on lessons learned, experience that you've all had, experiences that Dave and I had. But the highest level takeaway that I would like to branch out to all you guys and say is set a goal for yourselves this year to be the go-to person on your crew. No matter what that might be, no matter what that means to you, to your crew chief, always try to have that piece of information to be that go-to person whenever that go-to person is necessary. It could be a call on the field. It could be picking up a fellow crewmate from the airport, or sticking around to make sure they get dropped off at the airport that extra hour. If we can have 10 or 8 or 9, however many people you have on your respective crews, go-to officials on that crew, it will be a lot more smoother experience for everybody. So think about that, and think about how you can contribute to be that go-to person this year, and really harness your own personal strengths and volunteer them to your crew chief to say, hey, I'm great at this. How can I help with that value behavior trait or value trait that you can possess and share with the crew?
Oh, excellent. And that kind of leads into our first point. And we want to talk about a couple points first that I think lay the groundwork for any type of situation you might encounter. And that's first is lean into your own style. If you're a crew chief, that means lead into how you lead others. Lean into your own leadership people or leadership style. If you're not a crew chief, you have your own personality. Be proud about it and lean into that. Why you're where you are in officiating is because you've used your strengths, your unique way at studying the game, studying the rules, making decisions in a split second, tight time frame, and you've proven the ability to work together well with others, which is a big secret here in football officiating. Whether it is a crew of 5 or 6 or even up to 10 or 11 at the higher levels, you have to get along with others and communicate clearly in some fashion. You could be a quiet type. That's all right. You could be the one that always has the go-to joke at the time. That's fine too. And if you're not good at telling jokes, don't worry about it. There's a place for you on the crew in some way. So lean into that style. Borrow ideas from others, yes. What do you like? What don't you like? But mold it into your own way. It's not going to work if I try to be Jeremy Valentine. and it's not going to work for Jeremy to try to be Ron Snodgrass. It's just not going to work well. We have to be our own officials as we are on the field, because when you have the unscripted situation that happens, whether it's in the game or on the way to the game, your true personality is going to need to lead the way. So really lead into your own style. Number two, I would say, this first goes with, if you're a crew chief, the crew is going to expect you to set expectations. And if you're, just a member of the crew, follow those expectations, and what those could be. This could be how much study is necessary to put in throughout the week. And that's going to depend on maybe what level that we're working at. If we're only working Friday night games, there's going to be some level of study that's needed, but whatever it is, do what's expected. It could be, what time, obviously, that we're going to meet for a carpool or meet at the game, what time we need to arrive into a city, if we're flying into a city, if we're traveling to a game like that, how much maybe prep or scouting or film work to do ahead of time. All those things, really the crew should be on a similar page about. So it's up to the crew chief maybe to set those expectations, but for everybody else, either, fall in line and push people at the same time about what those expectations are. Anything to add on that, Jeremy?
Really, when it comes to expectations, try your best to know what the expectations or the baseline expectations are for the level of officiating you'll be entering this season, and do what it takes to be ready to meet those expectations before we even take our first snaps in September. I remember my first year in the Division II conference, the GLIAC. We had this was an association-driven initiative, and probably one of the best experiences I've had in my officiating career. The association had a mentorship program where we had our extremely well-tenured officials volunteer their time to mentor the first-year officials each and every year. Now, these tenured officials, they would get new officials to mentor year in, year out. So they'd have 5, 6, 7 officials that they'd be attempting to mentor throughout the off season. I got paired with one of the most famous or infamous, depending on who you ask, referees in the GLIAC, Rick Shifter, who was also an extremely tenured wrestling official here in Michigan. But I really leveraged that information or that relationship and got every bit of information that I could from him. He became really my new best friend during the off season, and I leveraged as much time that I could for him to prepare myself adequately for what's about to come in September. So I didn't have to ask those relatively basic questions with the crew chief. Where are the locker rooms at? How should I handle this coach? Is this chain crew any good? Are these timers any good? That stuff is what you can leverage the experienced officials for. And that way, when you do interact with your crew the first time, either in your crew calls or in the fall, you'll have that foundational knowledge already instilled in your brain, so you can talk at the more experienced or veteran level with your crews and get the respect from them that much earlier. So that would be one of my biggest things. Know the expectations up front and find a mentor that's either working at that level or someone that has worked at that level that you can leverage and get that information from, whether they're working in the league now or working in a different league. That'll help you out and help you prepare for that interaction, those first couple interactions and games with the crew.
I couldn't agree more. That's great advice for everybody. Our third point, there's a human element to what we're doing, and we have to remember that, especially in times of stress. We're all into this advocation of officiating because we either we're drawn to the challenge, drawn to wanting to get every call correct. Perfection was the goal, even though we know it's not attainable, but it's a motivator for us to get better. Why did we get something wrong? How can we improve in that situation? But still, when we do mess up, when we do make an incorrect call on the field, we all have felt it at the moment. that it just sucks and you know, our heads in the trash. How can we get out of it? Yes, we need to do work for ourselves internally to get past that call and get back in the game, but we can help each other out as well. And beyond even calls during the game, things happen in our lives. Things happen throughout the week. It could be a stressful week at work, stressful week at home. We could be going through a really tough health situation, or a family member could be going through a health situation, or even just, you know, a really rough year, personally or professionally. We all need each other to kind of help us get through those times. You know, I think, you know, anytime you talk to an official who's been blessed with a 30-year, 40-year career, they'll talk about some years just weren't fun. Some years were tougher than others, and how they got through them. They got through them from a variety of people on the crew that have kind of realized that instead of maybe some tough love in those situations, they needed that warm shoulder to help them through. So if you recognize a crew member that might be thinking about the call 10 calls from now, how can you go into them and maybe on a break or at some point during the game and say, you know, what do you need? Or how can we get you back in the game? Or you need to get back in the game, or whatever style that, again, using your personality and how you would do that will definitely work. How can you reach out to someone maybe on a Wednesday to talk about maybe something that's going on personally or professionally? Of course, in a manner that they would find as acceptable and comfortable, and that's how you build up their rapport throughout the year with your crewmates. You want to do that as well. But it's important, and again, not just as a crew chief, but for everybody, to encounter situations and treat them with empathy, because we all have gone through them, and we all will if they haven't already. Anything to add on that, Jeremy?
Now, so far, these first couple points that we've been talking about isn't necessarily managing crew conflict when it happens, but more trying to lead into it, prevent crew conflict from even beginning. But like Dave says, it's not an if situation, but when. I remember a time, again, referencing back to the D2 days, we had a game up in Houghton, Michigan. And for those of you unaware of Michigan geography, it is a 9-hour drive from Ann Arbor. Nick, when you lived in Athens, I think you could probably add 4 hours to that. So we had folks in our crew traveling roughly a half a day for that coveted $300 paycheck up at Michigan Tech University. But we were lucky enough to have that noon kickoff, which means we can show up Friday night, get in at 9 a.m. for the pregame 3 hours before kickoff, kick the ball off at noon, get out of there. This might have been 2010, 2011 when we had those nice clock rules, Dave, and we can spin a college football game in about a minute or an hour 55. Those were the good old days. But yeah, get out of there around 2:30, and we're back home hopefully before the sun sets, as long as it's early enough in the fall. So typically we'll have a nice crew breakfast once we get up there to wash the previous night's libations away before we go out and kick things off. Oop, did I say that out loud? Is this being recorded? Nick, you can edit that out later.
Sure.
But we go to this restaurant up in Hancock, which is on the other side of the bridge in Houghton. First time our crew's ever been there. Looked pretty good. It got 5 stars on Google. We all sit down. It was pretty busy. We order, and this was at 7:30. We had plenty of time, hour and a half for breakfast to get to the school. So we all order our food. There's the 8 of us there. 8:30 rolls around. We still haven't been served. 8:45 rolls around. People are getting nervous. Now we're 15 minutes away of our scheduled arrival time for the schools. And our supervisor back then was a stickler on not showing up late. He basically had his ADs, or his ADs were instructed to call him when the crew wasn't showing up on time. 8:55 rolls around. We don't have our food. And now the whole crew's antsy. What do we do as a referee? We were starting to lose our perception, our crew image. Actually, long before that 8:55 time frame came around. People were starting to get upset, visibly upset at the restaurant, visibly upset at the wait staff. They weren't taking it out on the staff yet, thankfully, but cooler heads had to prevail. It was up to myself, and I leveraged our veteran umpire at the time a little bit. say, hey, you handle the crew, I'll handle the supervisor and the AD, and we'll fix this. I had our back judge just walk up and nicely ask the wait staff to get our food to go. I told the guys, hey, we're going to go have a breakfast themed pregame at the school. We're going to grab our food, go have a quick little chat and discussion at the school. Made a phone call to the supervisor, made a phone call to the AD, and took care of business. Was it the most comfortable pregame and the most relaxed pregame that we had as a crew? Absolutely not. Did we check all the boxes I was hoping to check off as a crew chief? No. But the good news is we salvaged our crew perception. We didn't embarrass ourselves in the public. We covered all the bases and checked all the boxes and explained to the supervisor and AD what was going on. And we went out and had a good football game. The things that we have to prevent ourselves from sacrificing when we are faced with adversity, when we have conflict off the fields, is number one, our professionalism and perception as a crew. No matter where you are, no matter what city you're in, the people in that city know exactly who you are. Nobody on a Saturday morning is going to walk into a diner dressed in suit and tie. A group of 7 or 8 individuals at the same time every Saturday in the fall, usually at the same restaurant, because we recruit sheets all talk. We know where the good restaurants and breakfast spots are. We're all going to the same place. They know who you are. So don't let any negative emotion, either amongst the crew or amongst your family or with things happening around you, get in the way of your crew perception, your crew image, and your professionalism leading up to that game. And believe and know that you have eyes on you from the minute you get to that town to the second you leave, and even beyond that, and have your actions and your crew's actions reflect that throughout that entire time at the facility and at the venue. I don't know, Dave, you got anything else to add?
Yeah, I just, I'm sure everyone, as you're telling that story, maybe we're thinking about a time that they've had where a meal hasn't gone the way it was planned. And maybe some of the emotions or things that you had thought about during that experience, and it may seem like it's not that big of a deal. So breakfast ran late, so you'd arrive 20 minutes late. Who cares? But think about if you haven't been able to think about how that could have played out, where the meal's running long. Maybe it's at Friday night, maybe it's on Saturday morning, and there's a couple people on the crew that are getting really frustrated because we've all had those experiences in the restaurant where we're just gonna want to go out and have a nice night out, and something happened. Your favorite meal wasn't ready. Maybe it was bad service. Maybe something was the server dropped the plate right on your lap or whatever it was, and it's really frustrating. And you got off your normal way that you'd experience your Friday night or Saturday or whatever day of the week it was. How could you handle that situation? How could you respond to that situation? And this goes into crew conflict, because if you had taken the route of letting those frustrations really come out, how prepared are you going to be to work the game, whether it's in 2 hours or whether it is the next day? If you still had maybe a pregame meeting to talk about, are you going to be even listening to what anything is talked about during that pregame meeting? Are you going to be paying attention for film review? Where if you just realize these things happen and we'll make the best of it, as frustrating as it is, and maybe inside you're wondering, why are you doing this? You gotta, or how can you help the situation or help again, maybe get someone's head back in the proper space to officiate the game. That's why we're there. Everything else is just fun. When it is a lot of fun, but that's really how you have to always think about these situations. They will happen. I mean, I think, 1 or 2 times a year, there's something wrong that happens either at the pregame meal or on Friday night for that. So I want you to think about that. And I'll, throw out another situation that we can encounter at times. But I also, again, want to encourage all of you, what have been some situations you have experienced or just even wanted to get some feedback on it. So I'll pose this question out there. you're working with a crew that you've been mostly familiar with, and there's a one person on the crew that just hasn't been acting themselves this year. They're just a little bit different. They're not as lively. They're struggling a little bit more in weeks 2, 3, and 4, and you're just not really sure what's going on. You've already made one inquiry about, is everything okay? And they're responding, just, they're not really responding as far as giving you much information, or not wanting to talk about it or all that, but you can just sense that something's wrong. Here's where the participation part comes in. I'm looking for what are some tactics you as a crew member can help with that fellow crewmate of yours, to either find out what's going on or anything else. What would you do? So again, no wrong answers, no right answers. The point of this is just to throw out some ideas and help with this very plausible and likely situation that we're going to have. How would you maybe help with a crewmate that's struggling this year compared to other years? And you just go ahead and open up your mic and throw out a suggestion.
I think finding time to reach out to them, especially if they're new to the crew, is a really good way to try to build rapport among anybody, not just, not relying on the referee to have to do that. Because I think that sometimes new people get the impression that, like, everything that I got going on needs to run through the referee, and if they're not gelling with the referee or they're not communicating effectively, then they're feeling kind of lost and left out. So I think being somebody who's willing to step up and do that is helpful.
Mm-hmm. I would agree, very helpful. Any other ideas? Any questions specifically that you would ask?
Probably would give him a call after the game, or during the week, just to make sure and kind of touch base of anything going on. And it's one-on-one, and it's nothing personal. Just kind of want to see your mindset to see if, anything upset, family going okay, or job, your health, or anything that's, you can open up to them, or at least try to get them by themselves to talk about it.
Yeah, and that last point, getting them by themselves is an important one. Maybe it's not in front of everybody,
Yeah.
but whether it's maybe when you're just walking the field, potentially, depending on what the situation is, or after the game, or during the week. Those are all some good ideas. Another idea that has worked before, and this can be with some coordination, and it definitely helps if you know more of your crewmates in these situations, is it doesn't always have to be a one-on-one conversation. It can be not that it's like a group sort of intervention or anything like that, but it can help where you have, maybe 2 or 3 crew members just suggest and open up with the comment of, like, we're a little bit worried. We're worried about you. Again, show that empathy, show that concern for someone else. We notice you're not yourself. Anything you want to talk about, and it's then becomes, well, it's not just one, or maybe I was able to hide what was going on, but if multiple people are saying it, maybe I can. And again, with people that we know, this is how important rapport building is throughout the year, and from season to season. But that can also help when you have maybe 2 or 3, just have that really just genuine conversation with somebody. As I always like to say, be a friend. That's kind of what we all want inside, is to have other people be a friend to us when we need it. So be a friend to someone else. Would anybody like to offer a crew situation or situation that you've encountered, and maybe what you did, or want just to solicit some feedback on how to handle that from the past?
I can offer a situation that of how to handle a difference of opinion on the field, and then how not to handle it after the game. Like we said earlier, not going to mention names, but this was a situation where there was a onside kick, and our touch jumps in the air, catches the ball, lands out of bounds. And myself and the side judge look at each other and we thought, all right, looks like we got a free kick out of bounds. And we throw the flag, which is incorrect. And we got together as a few of us as a crew. Member, someone who was actually filling in for our umpire stepped in and said, you guys don't have a foul, you need to pick up your flag. And I'd asked for a little more input and he didn't say anything. He just said, it's not a foul, pick up your flag. So we decided to go with it. And it was during the next media timeout that I realized that I had kicked a call and made a mistake. And I went and approached him on the field and said, you know what, you were right. I got that one wrong. And then in the locker room, I went up to him and said, for purpose of the game report, this is how I would like to approach, putting it into the foul report. I will, say I got the call wrong. You came in and gave the correct information, and that, I chose to stick with my call. And he said, don't worry about it. I don't want to do that. You don't need to put my name in it. So the next morning, I get a phone call or a text message from Bob Wagner that says, give me a call when you get a chance about play 147. So I look in the foul report and I noticed that the umpire who did not want me to give him kudos for having the correct information inserted his own entry into the foul report indicating that he had communicated information to me about the foul and that I ignored him and went about my own business. So the moral of the story in this is, don't try to make yourself look like a superstar at somebody else's expense, especially when somebody is offering you the opportunity to good. I offered to tag him in the play and say, this is where I got it wrong and you got it right. And I think the important message here too is, this really upset me. And, referees talk, word gets out, and when you guys have your referee calls about, who's doing things right and who's not doing things right. And, this specific individual has, didn't have a good reputation coming out of that. And I haven't worked with them since. I mean, there's a possibility I could eventually do that in the future. And, I'll just understand that, what I may have to deal with going forward if I have to, end up in that situation I'm working with him again. But, I think the important thing is, we're all out there together and we either succeed or fail together. It's not obviously we all have individual goals, but, we live and die as a crew. And I think it's important to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Thanks for sharing that. It's definitely not a good situation. It kind of leads us into our next topic that we wanted to hit. Dave and I have been talking about a lot of preventative techniques that you can utilize to prepare yourself and prevent crew conflict. But what happens when it actually happens, especially on the field? We can all picture issues and circumstances that we've either seen on TV or that we've observed during our own video review of officials that might not be exhibiting the best crew perception or the best image as a crew when they're either on the coach's tape or on the YouTube stream or on ESPN, wherever that might be. And we as a crew, we as crew chiefs, number one, set expectations on how we need our crew image to be presented while we're on the field. And then as a crew member, one of our expectations as referees is to make sure that you're aware of those as you're interacting with the referee or with other officials on the field. And one of the biggest things about that is knowing and having that self-awareness that whenever you are near the referee, just assume that you have a camera on you, especially when there's penalty enforcements taking place. If you're close to the person in the white hat, that's where the camera is. And it might not be cutting to you, but there is definitely a camera on the referee and you are likely in the shot. So doing things like gesturing with your hands, shrugging your shoulders, saying, I don't know what happened, pointing at players, pointing at sidelines, pointing at fellow officials. All those things can be misinterpreted as either an official attempting to overrule another official, an official trying to point at or demean a player or coach or sideline, or if you have your arm around an official, one official trying to convince or sway the decision of another. One practice I like us to have in our crew is to imagine they have rubber bands strapped around their wrists and strapped around their ankles whenever they're interacting with each other. And whenever you can kind of figure out what they're doing with their hands, just think of those rubber bands linking your wrists and your ankles so it keeps them locked on the side of your at the side of your body. That prevents you from pointing, that prevents you from touching other officials. And I am known, I think a lot of officials on this call can attest to this, but if we're in the middle of a crew huddle and they start either touching myself or touching each other or pointing, I'll stop the conversation and say, put your hands down, don't point, don't touch me, don't touch each other, just to make sure that we maintain that crew image on camera or on film. It makes us look that much more professional. It helps protect our crew brand and our crew image. We can save all that type of conflict for the locker room, either at halftime or more, or hopefully even better after the game. What happens when that crew conflict takes place? Again, establish general ground rules before the season starts on how we handle quick ref entries. I think most of the folks on this call now are utilizing quick ref or some sort of grading system. And the first thing that we talk about as a crew, or we agree upon as a crew, is that no one makes a comment about another official in the grading system, and especially no one tags another official in that grading system without agreeing what's going to be said in the comment section first. Both of those officials need to be on the same page, and they need to be ensured that what's going to be entered in that grading system is actually a message that both officials can sign off on. If there's conflict between that entry, you're going to have to go to the referee first, and the referee is going to have final say. And typically when that happens on our crew, the referee's comments are what gets placed in there, and the individual comments are just taken away. Yes, those officials are going to be tagged still. I'll probably tag myself even as well. So all the graders will see the full side of the story from the one official, the other official, and then the crew chief as well, stepping in. But by all means, abide by those rules, set those ground rules for first. Secondly, abide by them throughout the season. And then lastly, the rule that trumps all, what happens on the crew stays on the crew throughout the season. The worst thing that you can do as an official is start putting that dirty laundry that you have out into the open. And like what Frank said, referees talk. There's a network that can communicate information faster than I think any media outlet out there throughout the referee network. And if you share some plays in a rules meeting or on a NERSA NCAA call that is airing out some of your crew's dirty laundry without clearing it with your crew chief or the calling official first, it's going to end up getting back to your crew chief or your calling official, and they're not going to like it. So make sure that what you're going to present and how you plan to present it is something that the crew can all get behind as a learning opportunity versus just a smear attempt at another official. Dave, you got anything else to add?
Yeah, you talked, I think, a little bit about body language on the field, and that's a great thing that we can do to scrutinize ourselves after the game when we watch film. Not again just was the call right or wrong, or were we in the correct position, but how did we appear? What was our presence? What was our presence during a crew conversation on the field, or maybe even a conference when we need to have one of those? Did we look upset? Did we look calm? Did we look poised? You can really actually gain a lot, and you can remember how you were thinking through the conversation on the field, and then how your body language came out on film. and really learn a lot. You can learn a lot about, how confident you were in the call, how well you communicated what you needed to communicate during a call by, just taking a look at how the crew looked on TV. That's something you can do. Another thing is, most of us now are in stadiums that have some sort of replay board. That's a good tool that you can use, but not for 5 officials to be looking at the replay board. If you're off in the distance, sure, take a peek. Maybe you can get some information that helps. But if you're talking with the referee and all of a sudden you hear the crowd and maybe ooh and ah because of a replay, and you do this, and you look at the replay board, right there in the middle of the conversation, that doesn't look good. That's going to really affect the perception of the crew. And then just a little bit more on Frank's scenario. I mean, it comes back to, how do we want to build camaraderie within each other? Are we going to be that official that's kind of known or perceived to be out for themselves, and want to make me look good, but not the rest of the crew? Do I want to prove that I'm right and someone else is wrong? Or how can we handle the situation together? If there's a mess, it's all of us in the mess. If we have an inadvertent whistle, it's not just one official that had that problem. All of us are in a mess. So how can we pick each other up? How can we get through that really difficult situation? Because unfortunately, those do happen. It happened to our crew last year, and I was really proud how everyone pulled together right after in the game, and then after throughout the whole year, and that probably brought us closer with how we handled it. Because we didn't make that official feel down, or make it any worse than they were feeling, because that's a bad feeling. None of us like being there. So again, treat it with empathy, treat it and humanize that experience, and I think it's going to do wonders for your crew. Would anyone else like to offer a situation or experience? And thanks again, Frank, for sharing.
Well, how would you guys recommend dealing with, as you mentioned, we all bring our own personalities and styles to the field. How do you manage situations in which maybe you've got 2 crew members who are just butting heads over things, not necessarily related to on the field stuff, but all of the stuff that happens is, surrounding the game or the crew, but in the locker room is one situation. On the field, everything's fine. But how do you manage those kinds of things?
You think about that, Nick, and you kind of, I go back to the program management or professional leadership style. The phases of team development. They talk about forming, storming, norming, performing. Those 4 phases. I know everyone on this call has probably heard about that before, and it happens on every single team. No matter how hard you try to prevent it, you're going to go through those 4 phases, and trying to get through the first 3 steps ahead of time, or as quickly as possible, and get to that performing phase is the best way out of those woods. So it's not trying to prevent the storming phase. That's bound to happen. Again, it's not if, but when. It's letting it happen, letting people explain and get through their differences. You as the crew chief, or you as the perceived leader of the crew, finding out how to leverage those differences to add value to the overall crew, to get the entire team to that performing phase, is the way to go. What I like to do on our crew, primarily before the season, is create a guidebook for the crew. This came from or stemmed from my first year in the Missouri Valley, joining the staff as a referee with 6 other extremely tenured officials, actually 9 when you count the replay folks, who have been in that league for 15, 20 years. And in walks this 30-something new guy who's been doing nothing but D2 football for 10 straight years. Not the most comfortable scenario for me as a crew chief. And I'll be the first to admit, it wasn't the easiest season for the crew as a result. I learned a lot from it. And one of the biggest things was trying to figure out a way to get through those conversations that we as a crew had in September during games and during pre-games before leading into games, and getting all that stuff out of the way. And I'm talking about the basic stuff like we already discussed. Where are the locker rooms? Who should we talk to? How are these coaches? What expectations should we establish as a crew when it comes to measurements, how to communicate first downs, how to do penalty enforcements, that basic stuff. And now a lot of that's captured either in this this guidebook that I give to all of our crew members before the season starts, that teaches the new officials where we stay for hotels, what we do for travel, what we do for breakfast, dinner, meal expectations, general crew expectations, along with some additional crew mechanics that we've all developed as a crew to make things look and go a lot smoother on the field. I found that having that guidebook and having some good preseason discussions, we don't go crazy in the off season, but we will have 6 to 7 crew calls where we talk pretty heavily on mechanics before leading up to September to get all those things out of the way. So when it comes to our week 1 pregame, we are fully prepared with the basic stuff, the foundational stuff, and we can treat week 1 like a week 5 or a week 6 pregame and go out there at the start of the season and hit home runs like we normally do in the midseason as well.
Yeah, I'll just add, yeah, it's important, you know, whether you're the crew chief or again, someone else on the crew that's helped mediating that disagreement in your situation, Nick, to help find common ground. You know, basically when something's bothering us, whether it's another official, another human being, you know, we want to get something, we have to get that emotion out. We have to get it out. We have to process it in some way. So we have to, you know, be able to have that space, that time to be able to voice what our concerns are and why it's affecting us. And then, you know, for that mediator, that third party, you know, try to find the common pieces. Because again, if we can bring that conversation, no matter what the issue is, back to the overall goal, how can we officiate a football game as well as our crew can? That's what the direction has to be. So, you know, that might need to have some compromise from both parties, but if we can redirect that energy back into how can we officiate as well as we can, that's really what we have to, how to steer the conversation. If you're that mediator, that third party in that situation.
And trust, it's not human nature to, at least in a majority sense, to have ill will or attempt to sabotage situations. When we have some conflict in the workplace or even on our crew from time to time, the biggest thing that I'm trying to get those officials to understand, and even get myself to understand quite often, is that what the actions that people do are well intended. They're well mannered. They, in their mind, are trying to perform and add value to their crew. Is it the ideal scenario, or is it the way to the actual goal? Maybe not. But treat it like a learning opportunity. Set high expectations as a crew chief and for yourself. For those referees out there, there are multiple paths to get to those expectations. Many of your crewmates might not take that path that you yourself would go down. But if they start to stray a little bit, instead of correcting them, just nudge them in the right direction and let them get to that path their own way. By doing so, they're going to learn in the process and become a better official. And number 2, they're finally going to reach that goal and add overall value to the crew. So take that away. Whatever's being done, they have good intent. Understand that and try to find what that intention is and where that value can be leveraged.
I had an interesting situation that happened that kind of relates to that. I knew this person didn't have a bad intent, but so I'm a deep wing. There was a deep pass down my sideline that was intercepted. So I ended up taking the spot when my sideline official came and took the spot from me. I went to run off in the direction I needed to go, and he momentarily got confused, thought that I was going the wrong way. And he grabbed my arm and pulled me in the other direction, thinking that, and I'm sure he thought that he was helping. He ended up leaving like a handprint bruise on my arm. I'm thinking that he was really trying to help me. It was just a weird fluky thing, but it happened to, so I didn't say anything to anybody because I didn't want to make it weird. But it happened again a couple weeks later. I still didn't say anything, but then from then on, obviously I was uncomfortable on the field with this person. Every time like we would be exchanging spots, I'd be making like a wide berth around him. The only other person who knew was my deep wing, and my fellow deep wing, and I only told him like after the season was over. But I was just concerned it was going to make a really awkward crew dynamic if I brought it up. But it didn't make me comfortable on the field either. So I don't think I handled it the right way, but I'm not sure what the right way would have been. And I'd love some feedback on that if you have any ideas.
Thanks for sharing that, Jen. And you know, for one, I would say there's probably not one right way to handle it. You know, you handled it in the way you thought at the time, and now you've reflected. Maybe you're not sure if you handled it correct. So that's half the battle, right? That's half the analysis on what to do. Does anybody have a good suggestion? I'll throw it to the whole room again to encourage participation. How would you address that with the official? Probably after the game. That's not probably an in-game conversation, but maybe after the game.
Hey, Dave, this is Chuck.
Mhm.
Jen, I have a question for you. Are you working with the same official this year, or is that in the past?
That's in the past.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, and something like that, Jen, really kind of showcases how just one little action can really snowball into the emotions and the situation that you're currently in. You can tell that one single act that led into another one still affects you to this day, and it affected you and your performance throughout the entire season. So it's important to act quickly and make sure that there's a resolution swiftly with that. And like Dave said, there isn't one easy way to resolve this. And a lot of that will probably be leveraged on your relationship with that sideline partner. Was it your first game with this individual? And have you not established any type of relationship or bond yet? You can probably imagine or picture folks that you'd be on the field with, where if they did that, you can just say, hey, don't do that. And you forget about it. And the guy says, hey, oh, sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. And we move on, versus folks that we might not have that comfortable relationship with, where it could get extremely awkward. And the first place that I, as a crew chief, try to establish is making sure that that official and myself can have those safe space conversations. So, you know, we talk about whatever happens on the crew doesn't leave the crew. But secondarily, if we need to have a private conversation with crew chief to official, I treat those as similar conversations that I have with folks on my engineering team that need to have a discussion with a supervisor or a manager regarding potential ethical violations or human resource violations. And if it gets to that, you can confide in the crew chief, and that crew chief can then go, if they feel it necessary, to take that up the chain to conference leadership or the position trainers if they see fit, or just handle it with the official directly. That's a tough decision as well, because if you go to the crew chief and the crew chief then goes to the official, it might even further damage that relationship between you and your sideline partner, because now it looks like that there's even a larger gap of communication. So it's a difficult situation. It's not good that you had to experience it, not just once, but a second time. And honestly, if I hear of something like that happening on our crew, then it would probably involve a crew chief discussion that goes straight to conference leadership. That would either result in some assignment changes for the crew, or maybe even something beyond that the supervisor would have to decide on what actions are reputable.
I think, I'll just offer a couple thoughts, and it's good for everybody if to recognize if you're bothered by something, it's important to rectify it, and it's important to bring it up. Bring it up to the individual that is bothering you, or maybe it is the crew chief in that type of situation. But if during the game, something happened and it didn't sit well with you, maybe you take a couple nights to think about it, and just and ask yourself, am I still upset at this? Am I still bothered by it? And if so, you only can do one thing, or the best thing to do is to address it. You have to address it with that other individual, and that's what works at work for us. That's what works at home, for us. So it's going to work too in the football field, for all that. And that's where I go back to my first point of our discussion tonight: is lean into your own style. If you're good with making jokes and able to diffuse the situation, that's how you address it. That's how you bring up the subject. If you're more direct, be more direct with that individual. If you not know where to start, you can ask others how to start. Ask other friends on how to start. But usually, again, just it's a good thing to even say is, hey, I need to have a conversation with you, and I don't really know how to start it, or it's not an easy topic. Saying that phrase to start, one of the best things you can do, because it kind of it brings it sets the tone for both people. This is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, or it might be uncomfortable, but it's an important one. And that alone, that phrase, that one sentence phrase of, I need to have a conversation with you, but I'm not sure how to start it, it kind of breaks the ice. It really eases the tension and gets you more easily into that sort of conversation. So that's one tactic you can use.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. That's a good strategy.
I know I got a question sent to me about people that might be filling in on a crew this year, and how to gel in, best ways to do that. And not to sound so much like a broken record on that, but again, you're there for a reason. So use your own strengths and on whatever that is, offer to help. Jeremy had some great ideas at the beginning of the discussion tonight, which again sounds simple, but offering to pick someone up to drive from the meeting spot, or to drive from wherever to go to breakfast, or maybe offer to lead a topic during the pregame meeting. Those are all things that you can at least do to seem like that you're willing to do whatever it is for the crew, and people appreciate that. One of the things that you get into officiating and you don't really think about is how to get from point A to point B all the time. And now all of a sudden, if someone is there just to make that a little bit easier, it really does help with all that. Not to say that you always have to buy dinner or get a rental car or anything like that, but that can help, from time to time, to be able to do that, or at least be flexible in your plans to maybe you wanted to get somewhere at 5 o'clock, and all of a sudden someone else is arriving at 5:45, and waiting those 45 minutes to take a shuttle together, or whatever it is, can go a long way. So that's just one thing as well. But again, don't try too hard. Just be yourself and who you are, and that's going to do wonders. That's going to put you at ease. It's going to make you a little bit more comfortable, which means you're going to officiate better. And all of that together means people are going to want to work with you again. Okay, anybody have any burning questions or other situations you want to share? Or that might be it for our discussion tonight. think that is it. So I really appreciate the listening, and hopefully it was useful. Throughout the year, like I said, we want to do a little bit different material and different talking points tonight. So I really appreciate your attention.
Thanks, thanks, Dave and JV. I really appreciate you guys stepping up and leading this. I wanted to, let me do this real quick to get everybody. Thanks for coming, everybody. I appreciate that as well. I wanted to give you some updates as to what's coming up next. In 2 weeks, we're back. Seth Wasserman has volunteered to lead a weekly preparation conversation. And then you can see we're looking for people who want to present things. We'll probably start diving into sharing our own plays probably once in September, at least once in October. But if you've got a topic and you're interested, just reach out to me or go into the Google Drive and throw your name and topic up there, and we'll get you a link and we'll get you set for that. But I'm looking forward to seeing everybody here in a couple of weeks. Thanks again to Dave and JV for their time tonight, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your week, and we'll hopefully see you back here in August. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks again, Nick. Appreciate the opportunity. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you.